Heightened importance, heightened intensity, heightened exposure. It must be an SEC opener. Alabama taking on South Carolina in Columbia and visiting there for the first time since 2010. And Bama fans know certainly what happened with Greg McElroy and company as they were the defending national champions and went down by 2 touchdowns at South Carolina and Steve Spurrier. We got Stephen M. Smith on the line from touchdownalabama.net. Please join him right there for top-notch Alabama football coverage. Stephen, how you doing today?
Doing great, man. I'm doing great. Getting myself prepared for this trip to Columbia on Friday.
Absolutely. Do you have any recollection of what happened there the last time the Tide visited?
I was not there, but I do remember that game. Alshon Jeffrey was a freak of nature. Stephen Garcia was a pretty good quarterback, and this was pre-injury Marcus Lattimore. And despite the fact that Alabama defensively had its most talented team, some complacency set in. I remember the crowd noise, the crowd at Williams-Brice Stadium, very into the game from start to finish, and just a complete performance from South Carolina, both offensively and defensively under Steve Spurrier, and just not the right moment for Alabama, seeing how that complacency set in, despite the fact that that was one of the more talented Crimson Tide teams under Nick Saban.
All right, we'll get to the here and now. It's week 3 preparation for South Carolina 2019. Before we get to an injury update, Stephen, you certainly filled me in before we started to record on the situation involving Antonio Alfano and just his situation, which has him a bit separated from the football team right now.
It's kind of weird what's going on with this young man, a 5-star from New Jersey, probably, definitely the biggest recruit in the 2019 class. And, fans very much so high on him, want to see him out there, want to see him on the field. And the situation going on is, at first, his absence during fall camp was due to some issues going on with his family, had some family things to take care of, but then he returns to practice. Everything seems to be fine for a while. And then now he's been missing a few days just due to some academic things, according to Nick Saban. Coach Saban talked about on Wednesday that he's in some disciplinary issues. Nick Saban keeping an eye on Alfano, but he's also been distancing himself from practice. So whether it's family stuff, whether it's academic stuff, there is something going on with Alfano. A lot of the people around the camp really don't know what's going on. I'm trying to dig and find out information, seeing how Alfano and his family, very private people, they don't like to talk, they don't like to spit things out there in the open. So right now, it is a mystery that is Antonio Alfano.
After a 62-10 against New Mexico State, of course, Alabama prior to that with a neutral site game against Duke, a Power 5 opponent, and despite a slow start offensively in the first quarter, disposing of the Blue Devils 42-3, a team that should win 6 or 7 games. So South Carolina maybe roughly on that tier. I would consider them to be a little bit better. It's going to be an upgrade in talent in regards to what Alabama's facing on Saturday. Before we get to the South Carolina outlook, a little shuffling along the offensive front. Some of that has to do with injury. And if you could fill us in on where the Tide stands on the health meter at this point.
Well, on the offensive line, Mark, they did get 2 of their guys back this week. Chris Owens at center, the redshirt junior out of Texas, a guy that rubbed his elbow, tweaked his elbow, did not play against New Mexico State. Alabama had Landon Dickerson start at that center position, the graduate transfer from Florida State. So you've got Chris Owens back. In terms of Emil Ikior, the redshirt freshman at left guard, he got hurt against Duke, a slight knee injury, something that he has had happen to him before, though he was back in practice on Wednesday. Coach Saban mentioning that it'll be about 1 to 2 weeks before they can officially get him back. I don't expect him to play against South Carolina. If he does, great, but I don't expect it to happen. I think he'll be back fully 100% in the following week as the Tide will host Southern Mississippi. So you got both guys back, Owens and Ekiyor, in practice, but Owens far more ahead of the game than Ekiyor is. I think Owens plays. Ekiyor is more of a game time decision. If he goes, great. If not, then he'll be back 100% against Southern Miss. But the big thing for Alabama, Mark, is getting that continuity on the offensive line to where it can block for its running backs as well as protect one Tua Tagovailoa. And for me, I don't really care which group of five Nick Saban and offensive line coach Kyle Flood put on that field, as long as it's the group of five that can show meanness, dominance, toughness, physicality, something in a consistent form of coming off the ball fast and doing what these guys are supposed to do. Because against New Mexico State, I mean, if you remove 4 explosive runs from Tua Tagovailoa, Henry Ruggs III, of course, a 74-yard touchdown run from Keelan Robinson, and then against Duke, the 37-yard touchdown run by Jerome Ford against Duke, Alabama's looking at, through the first 2 games, 252 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns off 70 carries, just 3.6 yards a pop. So that's telling me you're spitting off explosive runs, but in terms of just consistently getting 4 and 5 and 6 yards per rush, Alabama's offensive line and its backs, whether it be lack of vision on their part, not consistently generating big plays or a consistent productive yardage. And that's an issue. Whether it's the zone blocking scheme Alabama's trying to go with and setting up the RPOs, or the running backs not trusting the vision on certain plays, there's been a hang-up in the run game in terms of the offensive line and the backs. Fans kind of concerned about that. I wouldn't push the panic button right now, just seeing that it's early in the season. I want to see how this unfolds against South Carolina, but it is a call for concern, just seeing how you're used to looking at Alabama being able to line up and run the football and generate some form of a positive running game consistently, and that has not happened within the first 2 weeks against Duke and New Mexico State thus far.
To your point, Stephen, we're used to Alabama tailbacks, and they typically have 2 that are NFL ready running at the same time, averaging somewhere in the 6.5 to 7 yard per carry average. And that's after they've completed the entire schedule and played an SEC championship game and played the likes of Mississippi State and LSU and those teams, and then even national competition during the playoffs. So these are final season statistics, averaging 6.5, 7.5 yards per carry. And right now we've got Najee Harris at 5 flat. And again, consider the competition. And we've got Brian Robinson at only 3.3 yards per carry. So it speaks to the struggles you're talking about.
It does. And I understand both guys, Harris and Robinson, were suspended the first quarter against Duke. And, I get that. But against New Mexico State, I understand both guys got better as the game went on. But the leading rusher from that game was a freshman by the name of Keelan Robinson, who had 5 carries for 80 yards, including the 74-yard touchdown run where he saw the hole, hit the hole, and was gone. And, Saban talked about he's the only guy, the freshman, that has that burst, that has that speed, that juice to get to the next level of a defense. Nobody else, as far as the running back room goes, has that type of ability right now. And this is why a lot of fans are disappointed by the 5-star and Trey Sanders getting hurt in fall camp, sustaining that foot injury before the year could even get going. Because if you have Trey Sanders, Sanders is really challenging and pushing the likes of Keelan, Brian Robinson, and Najee Harris due to the skill set that he brings to the table. So a lot is going to be looked at, engaged in this matchup against South Carolina. Just seeing how the Gamecocks under Will Muschamp. You've got T.J. Bronson, a senior at inside linebacker. You got Ernest Jones. You've got D.J. Wonnum. And then on the defensive line, therein lies Javon Kinlaw, somebody that's going to be playing on Sunday. So South Carolina's got guys on its defensive front that are next-level guys. And they take after that aggressive personality that is Coach Will Boom Muschamp. And you got a fan base inside of William Bryce Stadium that is a loud, crazy, chaotic fan base. So a lot goes into this matchup. Alabama's offensive line will be challenged in this game. Can they establish some physicality, some grit up front and explode off the ball? We'll be able to see that, or will we be able to see that? The better question on Saturday.
Stephen, before we continue with the Gamecocks, speaking of running backs, how about that debut at the NFL level turned in by Josh Jacobs of the Raiders on Monday night, showing his speed, agility, power, explosion, and the tremendous balance that that kid has. Just had an amazing game for the Raiders right out of the gate.
Incredible. And I got a chance to watch that. And this is a young man that, I mean, his story has been incredibly, tremendously documented, going from being homeless in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a 3-star, living with his father, him among, 4 other siblings. So it's 5 of the children, and the father not knowing when the meal was coming from, not knowing what house they were going to stay in, going from apartment to apartment and hotel to hotel and living out the car. And the father keeps a pistol on his lap trying to protect the children. It was just a torturous childhood to go through for Josh Jacobs, and for him to make it through that to his career at Alabama and then becoming a first-round pick, number 24 overall to the Oakland Raiders, despite the fact that he was not a traditional starting back for the Tide. And just seeing the career he put up at Alabama, and in the game against the Denver Broncos for the Raiders, he helped carry that team to victory. I mean, according to ESPN, Josh Jacobs, the first back since LaDainian Tomlinson, 2001. We're talking San Diego Chargers edition, putting up 100+ yards from scrimmage with 2 touchdowns in an NFL debut. So he gave the Black Hole, he gave Silver and Black a fresh breath of air on Monday Night Football that fans have not seen since Bo Jackson, Eric Dickerson, guys like Marcus Allen. So to see a Josh Jacobs put on that type of show, it's great for John Gruden. It's great for Derek Carr. It's great for that entire fan base and that city to see a young man go out there and do his thing. My hat goes off to Josh Jacobs. A tremendous story. I want the best for that kid.
We're talking Tide, as we do on a regular basis, with Stephen M. Smith of TouchdownAlabama.com. Please join him and the rest of the staff right there. And we're talking up Alabama, South Carolina, the SEC opener. Of course, the Gamecocks came into the season with what I ranked as the most difficult schedule in America. And they're already playing from behind the chains, as North Carolina's that opener was assumed by most of us to be a win for South Carolina. And Mac Brown showed us something different. And he's off to a 2-0 start. So South Carolina had 1-1.
How about Mac Brown? How about
Brown
that?
Coming back and takes down 2 pretty quality opponents and pump some life into that program out of nowhere. On the other hand, Will Muschamp, I don't know that anyone expects him to finish the season with a great record because of the schedule, but now it's become even more daunting. This might be a pretty desperate football team that Alabama runs into Saturday.
Well, especially when you do not have your senior leader on offense, Jake Bentley, at quarterback, the 6'4", 220-pounder. And I understand Ryan Holinsky at 6'3", 230 pounds, a guy that was highly touted coming out of high school in California, a 4-star kid, somebody that was a pro-style quarterback, played really well against Charleston Southern. Nick Saban raved about his performance, but Charleston Southern is not Alabama. I understand he completed 24 of 30 pass attempts, 282 yards, 2 touchdowns against Charleston Southern, but he's coming up against a defense that's hungry, that's determined, and that wants to play violent. Outside linebackers coach Sal Sunseri was preaching all week, and I know this because I was standing right in front of him, Mark, as he was preaching all week. I don't want patty cake stuff. I want violence. I want you violent every single time. And that was Sal Sunseri the entire week. And not just him, Brian Baker, the defensive line coach, preaching energy, fire, enthusiasm, explosion. Like, they want to come after and affect Holinsky in the pocket the entire game. But some good things for South Carolina. You do have 4 running backs, of which you are rotating. You've got Rico Dowdle in there and Tavian Feaster, the transfer from Clemson. So you do have 4 backs that you are rotating. Offensively, South Carolina does have some physical weapons on the outside, led by Brian Edwards at 6'3", 220 pounds, a big-bodied guy. They've got weapons. So the main thing for the Gamecocks, can you neutralize Bama's front enough to allow Hilinski to have some time in the pocket to find his guys? Can you neutralize that pass rush enough to allow the likes of Rico Dowdle, Tavian Feaster, among other backs, should Will Muschamp rotate these guys to find the hole? So can you take pressure off your freshman quarterback? That remains to be seen. That's the biggest question for the Gamecocks, because Alabama is coming into this matchup violent, with bad intentions, trying to affect that passing game, that running game of South Carolina. And another aspect for Alabama, watch the special teams in this matchup. Nick Saban on Monday took a big chunk of his opening statement and praised South Carolina's punting game, kicking game, and return specialists. So this is a big matchup for Will Reichert, the true freshman kicker for Alabama. Whomever is punting for the Crimson Tide, whether it's Reichert or Skylar DeLong, the sophomore, and then you've got Jalen Waddle, the punt returner on special teams. We know what he can do with the ball in his hands. Can Alabama set the wedge up? And for dear Jesus, no block in the back this week for the Crimson Tide against New Mexico State. The young man from Houston, Texas, had a touchdown, but unfortunately somebody got the block in the back there, and that was called back. So Alabama setting the wedge up, give Jalen Waddle a chance to bust one back legitimately. But in terms of punting the football, set up your defense with desirable situations to where you're forcing Hilinski, you're forcing South Carolina to drive the length of the field on an Alabama defense. And Reichert at place kicking last week earned a lot of confidence, made a pair of 40-plus yard field goals, made all 8 of the extra point tries, so scored 14 of Alabama's 62 points, did well on kickoffs, 9 touchbacks on 10 attempts. So for Alabama's special teams, putting itself in favorable situations while putting South Carolina, punting-wise, at a disadvantage. Watch the special teams this week for Alabama.
There you have it, straight from the mouth of Stephen M. Smith of TouchdownAlabama.com. Join him right there and the rest of the staff breaking down Alabama football on a daily basis. The Tide is a 25.5-point favorite in its SEC opener on the road in Columbia against the Gamecocks of Will Muschamp. Want to let you know that my Week 3 predictions and weekly college football predictions available next to the description of Voice of College Football Community. Grab that link, sign up right there, get my predictions 31 and 20 against the spread the first 2 weeks of the season. Also, that we've got a partnership with St. Jude's Hospital, a volunteer roadshow, a number of YouTubers, and betnow.eu, where you get double your money there if you sign up using the hashtag or the link that you see next to the hashtag Sam Strong. Use the promo code MRTVCFB right there. Stephen, you enjoy your trip. Have a good time. Hopefully the buffet there at the press box will be good to you, because I know that's an important thing.
It is, but you know what, Mark? I'm actually going to fancy myself some barbecue. So got to check out the South Carolina queue here.
There you go. All right, Stephen, we appreciate you stopping by. I know you're busy, but have to get the breakdown from you on the big Alabama games. So we will see you soon, sir.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it, Mark.